Hey guys, welcome to Solo ReacTalk. Today I'm going to be reacting to Stellaris Invicta, Greater Terran Union by the Templin Institute. This is part 9. If you want to check out my previous reactions, I'll put the playlist right up top here. Just click on it and you'll be able to access them. Okay, let's start.
Okay, 3, 2, 1.
As the clock struck midnight across London on December 31st, 2599, the familiar military parades commenced on Earth and every other world within the Greater Terran Union. Such displays had been tradition for centuries, and many had taken place in times of war. But as the first hours of the 27th century ticked by, etched on the face of every soldier and onlooker was the fear that the current war could not be won. Within the executive offices of the National Council, the news from the front lines was equally grim. The most optimistic projections placed the complete disintegration of the Terran economy in under 6 years, while other more pragmatic reports estimated the capitulation of the Union to arrive far sooner. Across the frontier, scattered Terran battle groups, out of position and undersupplied, fought desperate battles against a tidal wave of enemy forces, while the home front struggled to support the war effort amidst the lingering devastation wrought by the Next network. As work continued on Project Oasis and the titanic frame of the ring world was slowly completed, secret convoys were hidden among the armada of ships which transited to the system each day. Cargo manifests listed these ships as carrying building materials or terraforming agents, but in reality, they were filled with some of humanity's greatest cultural works and historic artifacts. These convoys formed part of a clandestine plan to preserve the Union within the cluster, should every other effort fail and Earth itself be occupied. As preparations for the unthinkable continued in the shadows, Terran High Command...
So, they're preparing for the end. Interesting. I guess maybe this could be the end for the GTU in the galaxy, and then they'll just be stuck on that cluster and they'll make their last stand. Maybe, I'm not sure. But yeah, it looks like this might be the end. Capitulation in less than 6 years. Oh, this is terrible.
After a fierce internal debate, adopted Plan Sundial. Eschewing traditional Terran doctrine which favored near constant offensive action, Sundial was first and foremost a defensive operation. Crucial strategic targets were fortified, and target areas, some so large they encompassed multiple star systems, were identified and dissected into operational and tactical zones. Using closely coordinated battle groups, enemy forces would exhaust themselves on Terran defenses before fresh operational reserves could deliver a precise counterattack. Sundial required meticulous implementation, and with Fleet Command strained to its limits, disaster was inevitable. While minor victories were achieved, entire battle groups were forced to rout after minor miscalculations escalated into catastrophe. The Stellar Axis, an alien alliance led by the Florian Matriarchy, had gained valuable insights into Terran technology and strategy since the last war, and successfully prevented Sundial from achieving its full potential. In the Battle of Soau, 2 Terran battle groups, together with a sentient nanoplatform known by the epithet Lady Grey, engaged what was believed to have been an under-strength enemy fleet. Instead, they faced a fully reinforced Stellar Axis armada, led by a corps of hardened veterans. Their ships were carefully designed to exploit Terran weaknesses and completely cut apart the battle groups sent against them. A decade of industrial output and untold years of institutional knowledge were lost in a single day, and even Lady Grey was reduced to her component nanomachines. This victory for the Stellar Axis proved to be a Pyrrhic one, however. While the Union had failed to shatter the bulk of the enemy forces, the Federation of Nations arrayed against it had likewise failed to capitalize on their momentary successes. The vast distances involved had also begun to take their toll, and while Fleet Command could only sporadically reinforce its battle groups, both the Stellar Axis and Bright League had been exhausted entirely. Critically, Terran intelligence services, which for so long had proven incapable of breaking all but the lowliest enemy ciphers, finally began achieving noteworthy successes. Information intercepted through enemy networks reinvigorated the efforts behind Plan Sundial, and in the second and third battles of Soau, enemy fleets were trapped and destroyed entirely. By 2609, after over a decade of war, both sides were crippled seemingly beyond repair. The Bright League and Meshben had been forced to sign separate peace agreements, but the Stellar Axis refused to end the conflict. A grinding war of attrition seemed to be the only possible outcome, but in one of the most controversial decisions in the Union's history, Sundial was abandoned, and plans hastily made for a strike into the heart of enemy territory. A single Terran battle group.
Wow, guys. Through the skin of their teeth, they were able to survive. They're just lucky. They are super, super lucky. Two federations against the GTU, and they're still holding up their own. They're still able to beat them. Wow. Okay. I have to give it to them. Their tenacity, their resolve to never give up. It's quite admirable. Okay.
Assembled from the survivors of other formations and reactivated reserve ships, transited through the gateway network to the border systems of the two most powerful nations in the Stellar Axis. Both the Florian Matriarchy and the Algorithm, a machine empire suspected to be responsible for the creation of the next network, were caught completely unprepared. How much of a role this strike into the Stellar Axis played in the white peace that followed was difficult to determine, for a series of escalating events across the galaxy quickly overshadowed even what, at that point, had been the largest war in galactic history. The Greater Terran Union had long been aware of ancient powers that once ruled the galaxy before humanity had even mastered agriculture. The Meshben had been one such power, but their defeat by the GTU decades earlier had proven that while still formidable, they were hardly the giants they had once been. That was now changing. Like the Meshben, the Jazgavaz and the Zani had shown little interest in the affairs of the younger races beyond the odd threat or demand. While their ships and technology were overwhelmingly powerful, most existed in a state of disrepair or had not been properly manned in centuries. The defeat of the Meshben, however, had seemingly awoken these long-dormant powers. It began as
A war in heaven. Ladies and gentlemen, we are now entering war in heaven. Oh!
a subtle shift in the behavior of the Jazgavaz and Zani. While the Greater Terran Union was fixated on its war for survival, highly advanced reconnaissance vessels were spotted across the galaxy. They appeared in orbit of ancient ruined worlds, refusing all hails, their purpose and objective a mystery. The Jazgavaz were the first to fully return to the galactic stage. With whatever insights they recovered from their long-abandoned worlds, their shipyards and factories were brought back online. New fleets and armies were mobilized, and an area of space that had once been little more than a graveyard of history was transformed into the revitalized core of a new Jazgavaz empire. The awakening of the Jazgavaz instantly transformed the balance of power across the galaxy and upended the system that had been the only foundation of interstellar politics. Their return was of particular interest to the Zani. For reasons that had long since faded into history, the two powers were ancient rivals, and a renewed conflict between them seemed imminent. Everywhere across the galaxy, roving flotillas of Zani and Jazgavaz ships met in a series of increasingly tense confrontations. Diplomats from every nation convened emergency meetings to determine what action to take, and the National Assembly relentlessly debated how the Greater Terran Union could possibly navigate this new state of affairs in its current condition.
I don't know how they can navigate through all of this. Number one, what is it? Capitulate to, whichever elder race you choose. Capitulate to them, become their vassal. Number two, say no and fight against both of them. Number three, join a federation, maybe. Join a federation or some sort of like an alliance of alliance of empires against the elder races. But since the GTU has been making enemies left, right, and center, I don't think anyone wants to join them in an alliance against the elder races. So yeah, only two options: either you capitulate or you fight to the bitter end. And I think the GTU is gonna fight to the bitter end. I don't see them capitulating. I don't see them doing that. I mean, they are so. Okay, they're not xenophobic, like, fanatic xenophobic, but they are xenophobic. And I don't think they would ever want to bow before another alien race. Not after what has happened in their own history, during the occupation of Earth. So, yeah. I think they're going to fight. Yeah.
In 2615, time finally ran out. In the remote Irem system, the Jazgavaz and Zani met in open battle, and fleets of warships exchanged weapons fire of a kind that had never in recorded history been unleashed. Before the battle had even ended, representatives from both sides arrived on Earth, demanding the surrender and vassalization of the Greater Terran Union, that it would join in their war in exchange for technological wonders and promising terrible punishments should their offers be refused. Each side demanded a reply within 24 hours, a period that would come to be known in human history as the longest day. Neither the High Marshal, the National Council, the National Assembly, or the general citizenry of the Greater Terran Union harbored any fallacies as to the Union's current situation. The national strategic reserves had been drained, the military-industrial complex had only just begun to recover, and fleet, air, and land command remained dangerously under strength. Military analysts worked tirelessly to estimate the projected capabilities of each side, and as the hours counted down, reports were rushed to the National Council, each member knowing full well that the decision made here would dictate the fate of humanity. The only choice left was to decide which power could deliver the victory they had promised. On May 25th, 2615, 40 minutes before the deadline imposed on humanity expired, the marshals of the Greater Terran Union appeared before the National Assembly, and for the first time, they were joined by representatives of the Wasari Commissariat and the Union's allies, the Rixian Galactic Directorate, the Union of Numerium, and the Phyraxian Confederation. Their announcement was broadcast across the whole of the Union, to every citizen, ship, and station. In response to the demand from both the Jazgavaz and Zani that the Greater Terran Union capitulate, in response to the demand that humanity swear loyalty to alien masters, in response to the demand that the Union's armies be used to fight the wars of their new overlords, in response to the demand that Earth be governed by alien overseers, the High Marshal announced that the reply from the Greater Terran Union was a single word: never. The reaction from the Terran citizenry was nothing short of fanatical. In each night that followed, every public square in every city was filled to capacity, lit by endless torches as hundreds of thousands enlisted or re-enlisted in public swearing-in ceremonies. The largest corporations pledged to double their output, and campaigns to collect war materials, reject superficial luxuries, and give everything to the cause swept across both state and social media. Events that just months before would have seemed impossible grew commonplace. One by one, the other great nations of the galaxy, the Sofox Garden of Worlds, the Tenga Hierarchy, the Pux Directorate, the Rue Confederated Planets, and many others rejected the offers of the Jazgavaz and Zani. In the Avenue of Triumph in London, the flags, banners, and standards of new alien allies were raised alongside those of the Union and its commissariats. When the Stellar Axis pledged to fight alongside this growing coalition, citizens across the Union were moved from apprehension to tears as choirs belonging to the Florian matriarchy performed the anthem of the Greater Terran Union from Remembrance Plaza. What words alone could not mend?
Into the jaws of death on a pale horse, the GTU. Never. I like it. And, well, you know, to my surprise, it seems like all these other empires across the galaxy are also joining them. Okay, you know, let bygones be bygones. Water under the bridge. All the past transgressions that the GTU committed and all these other empires committed, it's all in the past now. We have a new enemy to fight, and we're going to join forces. We're going to do it together. Okay, I like it.
Actions healed. When the first Zani fleet arrived in the Styx system, intending to seize control of the extragalactic cluster, they were repelled by the fleets of Fleet Command, together with the Rixian Galactic Directorate and the Algorithm. This early victory helped cement the foundation of what had been considered an unthinkable alliance. But the reports from the rest of the galaxy were far less optimistic. Even as they battled each other across the galaxy, the Jazgavaz and the Zani turned their fury towards the Coalition. The Star Concord, perhaps the most powerful federation in the galaxy and one that had avoided any major conflict in its history, bore the brunt of the assault, and their losses were horrific. Bordering the Zani, the Kingdom of Partoga, the Rue Confederated Planets, and the Pux Directorate were instantly overwhelmed, with even their combined forces hopelessly outmatched. On the far side of the galactic core, the Jazgavaz pushed ruthlessly into the territories of the Stellar Axis, with the Florians the first subjected to a weapon of unparalleled cruelty. Utilizing platforms similar in design to the Sword of Terra, the Jazgavaz were able to encase entire worlds within an impenetrable energy field, severing them from the greater galaxy and forcing those trapped on the planet's surface to gaze out on a universe they could never again experience. Planet after planet was subjected to this terrible fate, with both the Algorithm and Commonwealth of Xana reporting the use of this weapon on their worlds.
Can we really say it's a terrible fate? I don't know. You guys decide which is better, to be killed by a neutron sweep or by a world cracker, or to be encased in a pacifier. Which is better? Do you want to die fast or do you want to die slow? I don't know. I don't know which one, you know. But I think I would choose pacifier. I mean, I'll be living until I'm the age of 100 and something years old or 200 and something years old, and then I die, and then I'm okay. But with a neutron sweep, it's instant. With a world cracker, it takes time. You know, you're gonna cook and then die. So I don't know. Hey.
As the Greater Terran Union struggled to rebuild its shattered economy, it could offer only meager assistance to its new allies, who, with every unsuccessful counterattack, grew weaker and less able to resist. In 2623, the Project Oasis was finally completed, and the finished ring world named Al-Waha. Now possessing a platform the size of an entire star system, the Greater Terran Union commenced an industrialization program of singular ambition. Fueled by the raw resources of dozens of cracked planets, Al-Waha became an arsenal for the entire Union, eclipsing the industrial capabilities of Earth, Sirius, Rodina, and Vikunta combined. While the Union's economy and industry recovered, its frontiers endured sporadic but devastating attacks. Gibraltar, one of the Union's greatest fortress systems, was lost to the Zani, while the Rixian Galactic Directorate fought for control of its only gateway. The primary advantage of the Jazgavaz and the Zani was their sophisticated jump drive technology. By manipulating the very fabric of interstellar space, their fleets could appear without warning and bypass static defenses built along hyperlane routes. While such methods of faster-than-light travel had long been equipped on GTU warships, the disappearance of the Cortez colonization flotilla in 2589 led to their use being prohibited outside of emergencies. Further,
Okay, I'm gonna call it out right now. I think I know the final crisis. Now that what I've heard right now from the narrator, now that I understand what's going on, I think I know who is the final crisis. But let's watch. Let's watch.
more, the jump drives equipped aboard the Zani and Jazgavaz vessels seemed to have overcome the inherent limitations of the system and were far more capable than anything the GTU possessed. By 2632, Fleet Command, steadily rebuilt over the previous decade, was deployed defensively at strategic locations with a rapid reaction force assembled in sticks. The one exception was the frontier with the Latian Commonwealth. The Latians were one of the few nations who had betrayed the galaxy and sided with the Jazgavaz, and the Greater Terran Union had systematically taken their territory. With the capitulation of the Commonwealth looming, the time had finally come for the Union to engage the Zani themselves. Emerging through the still operable Gateway network, the assembled battle groups arrived in a region of space that had once been the center of the stellar concord, now a graveyard of drifting wrecks and condemned worlds. When the warships of the Zani appeared, the Union and its allies were caught out of position. Still unable to adapt to their pervasive use of jump drives, Fleet Command ordered the retreat. Unable to transit out of the system before the Zani had engaged, the fleet's admirals ignored the order and redeployed the entire fleet while already under fire. As the battle raged across the system, Zani reinforcements closed in from every direction, preventing any coalition battle group from withdrawing. With every new enemy force, the tide of battle seemed to turn against the coalition, but even as its ships were reduced to ash, the line somehow managed to hold. Union-class Titans, retrofitted with weaponry reverse-engineered from Jazgavaz and Zani wrecks, were able to engage even the largest enemy dreadnoughts, while Terran escorts masterfully executed tactics that had been honed to perfection after centuries of almost ceaseless conflict. The Zani had performed well against nations which war was itself an alien concept, but against a power that was born in conflict, molded by it, they faltered. In a single stroke, the threat of the Zani was...
I like that. I like that. I like that. The GTU was born in conflict, molded in conflict. And that is true. That is true. If you go all the way back to Earth, and how Earth was becoming occupied by the Terran, they were molded during that time. You know, they were shaped by war. They were born in war. The entire organization existed because of that war. So yeah, I agree. I agree. Oh, the narrator's good. Oh wow. Ah, this is so entertaining. And the battles that we're seeing here, coming from the game, from Stellaris, it's beautiful. It's beautiful to see. Okay, let's continue.
In a single stroke, the threat of the Zani was over. While the Union had achieved the largest victory, other coalition forces struck targets across the Zani's nascent empire. But so long as the seat of their power remained, absolute victory could not be claimed. In 2639, the skies of the Zani homeworld erupted with the glow of Union landing ships as 7 army groups made planetfall. At the same time, the Sword of Terra, secretly retrofitted, was unleashed on the planet's moon, bathing it in neutron radiation and instantly killing every living organism, while keeping its advanced technology and facilities intact. When the sight of this reached the last remaining Zani defenses, their resolve crumbled, and the flags of the Greater Terran Union raised over their capital. The technology of the Zani, one of the last ancient powers of the galaxy, was firmly under Terran control. With the Zani gone, plans for a great counteroffensive against the Jazgavaz were formulated, and the Coalition mobilized its fleets outside their borders. Troubling reports were beginning to reach these forward elements, however, and strange readings were being recorded across that entire region of space. Even more reckless than the Zani in their use of jump drive technology, the Jazgavaz had seized an enormous region of space, utterly devastating both the Florian matriarchy and the algorithm. This success had come at a cost, however, and rips in the fabric of reality had begun to form across their conquests. When the first attacks occurred, they were beyond conventional understanding. Jazgavaz fleets seemed to disintegrate or just disappear entirely. Worlds that had been observed as merely occupied by the Jazgavaz appeared stripped of all living matter in a fashion that surpassed even the Sword of Terra. The only accepted explanation was that the unrestrained use of jump drives had opened a fissure across dimensions, bringing the Jazgavaz and the rest of the universe to the attention of an enemy far greater in power. Their ships were indescribable, and their advance relentless. The might of the Jazgavaz was immediately eclipsed, and world after world was swept of all life. With every new system they took, interdimensional anchors came into being, strengthening their hold on this new reality. The Coalition wavered. This extra-dimensional threat was beyond anything that had come before, and in an ultimate irony, those planets trapped within the energy fields created by the Jazgavaz now seemed to be the only safe ground in the galaxy. Not even during the height of the war against the Jazgavaz and the Zani had the Coalition suffered such losses, and it was above what its constituent nations could endure. Their fleet slowly retreated behind their old borders, waiting for some new discovery to tip the scales and deliver hope. Time was against them, however. Each new month, masses of eldritch machines poured out of the interdimensional rift, threatening to overwhelm what little resistance remained. The National Council was likewise conflicted, unsure whether to push forward or consolidate behind another plan like Sundial. It was the fate of the Florians that emboldened Terran resolve. The suffering the matriarchy had unleashed against the greater Terran Union had been terrible. Few had forgiven, and none had forgotten. But the war against the Jazgavaz had given rise to a mutual respect, and the courage displayed by the Florians, even as their fleets were crushed and worlds enveloped, was a virtue that every citizen of the Union could understand, and the very core of what the nation of humanity had been built on. The Florians were one of the doomed powers of the galaxy for which retreat was not an option. Their remaining worlds lay at the vanguard of the enemy's advance, and the withdrawal of the Coalition had doomed them to extinction. When an interdimensional armada arrived in orbit of their homeworld, Garden, and every trace of their existence was atomized, the purpose of the Greater Terran Union was clear. As the fleets of the galaxy retreated to what safety could be found, the Union advanced. Above the event horizon of a black hole, Terran warships dueled with interdimensional constructs, and when the battle was over, the invaders had suffered their first defeat. But the survival of all life demanded the Union's victory here be the first of many. As more and more of the enemy arrived through the rift, Fleet Command's forces embarked on a perilous campaign. Vastly outnumbered, its warships advanced together, engaging what weaker forces they found, and retreating before they could be overwhelmed. They left in their wake shattered anchor after shattered anchor, but also the drifting hulks of their losses. But the fire that had been lit across the Union had not died, and instead burned with a deadly heat. Al-Waha, together with the Dyson Sphere, provided almost unlimited resources, and new vessels flowed from shipyards that had been fully restored and now operated beyond their intended limits. Even Lady Grey, who for decades had slowly reassembled itself, committed its renewed strength to the war effort. As the Union advanced, the will of the galaxy started to turn. Fleets from every nation began to make a stand, and many began to join the Union directly. When the counter-offensive reached the dead world of Garden, there was no time to pay respect.
I don't know why, but that rarely happens when I play Stellaris. Like, when I'm fighting against the Final Crisis, nobody else really joins in. They're mainly just defending their home systems, and they die there. Some do retreat to further, further afield positions, but they don't really have that initiative to attack the enemy and push them back. It's mainly just defense.
As anchors across their space were destroyed, the stability of the rift had weakened, and a single decisive strike was all that was needed to end the threat of the extra-dimensional invaders entirely. On the precipice of this single final effort, calamity struck. Thus far, the extra-dimensional invaders had not gained access to the Gateway network, but with the capture of an extragalactic gateway, their ships arrived in Styx en masse. Its defenses depleted to help take part in the final attack, precious little remained to stop the invaders. Their victory here would grant them access to the whole of the galaxy and make any united defense impossible. It would also cut off the Union's access to Al-Waha and shut down the national economy in a single moment. Battle groups rushed to the aid of Styx, but none could arrive in time. As the foremost elements of the invaders engaged the Union's defensive lines, they were suddenly attacked from behind. A single fleet, hardly a match for the extra-dimensional forces, had appeared with no warning, engaging every target they could manage at point-blank range. These were no Union forces, or even those from the Coalition, but instead, the warband of the Great Khan, a mad tyrant who had always been content to boast from the safety of his meager empire. His counterattack was destroyed to a ship, but in that brief delay, Coalition reinforcements broke through the gateway and prevented Styx from being overwhelmed. With the path open, the combined fleets and battle groups of the Greater Terran Union struck like a thunderclap against the rift. Wasari, Rixians, Polenians, Skiro, species who for centuries had resisted humanity, now fought alongside them, honored allies in the greatest battle of all history. As the rift was damaged, the extra-dimensional invaders converged on the system from across the galaxy, only to be intercepted by the emboldened Coalition. Slowly but surely, Terran battle groups cracked the invaders apart until the rift itself was undefended and exposed. Fire from every warship poured into the rift until there was nothing left. The remaining invaders were directionless, their roaming armadas hunted down and destroyed. When the fleets of the Greater Terran Union returned to Styx, and from there redeployed to their peacetime stations, they arrived not only as saviors of the Union or of humanity, but of every form of life in the galaxy. A galaxy that would never be the same. In Stellaris Invicta, the Templin Institute led the Greater Terran Union into an uncertain future. Every Saturday, we live-streamed our progress on our Twitch channel, and viewers and patrons were given the opportunity to vote on decisions, help name planets, ships, leaders, and more. The live streams are now over, but they remain available on the Templin Archives channel. This is the final regular episode of Stellaris Invicta Season 1. We hope you've enjoyed the journey of the Greater Terran Union as it struggled to achieve galactic supremacy. While our playthrough of Stellaris is over, we continue to stream grand strategy games like Hearts of Iron, Civilization, and Total War. The next live stream begins 1 hour after this video goes live.
Those who come to us with the sword, by the sword shall perish. GTU. I had to double check and see if, this really is like the last part episode, and sadly it is part 9. And it was like very long. It was like 27 minutes long. So yeah, this was definitely the last episode. I saw there was still some other videos on the playlist, and I'll check them out as well. Yeah, wow, so much to go through. They almost lost the war against, what were they called? you know, the other races, before the Elder race war, they were still fighting against, you know, their own traditional enemies across the galaxy. You know, I forgot what they were named, the Matriarch. Yes, the Matriarch and their allies. The AI civilization, I forgot what they were called again. But yeah, they almost lost that war. Through some luck and some quick organization, they were able to, you know, hold them at bay and have a war of attrition. And the Elder races came into the picture and they gave them their ultimatum saying either join us or die. They said, we're gonna die. We're not gonna be joining any of you guys. And then to top it all off, the Unbidden pop up like, hey guys, what's going on? Can I also join in the party? Here they are, busy eating alive worlds and just clearing battlefields of hundreds of thousands of battleships from different races. And yeah, the GTU stood firm. It was molded in war. It was born in war. No Unbidden is gonna chase them away. No. They may have like a strategic retreat, but they will come back to the battlefield, and that's what they did after the matriarchy demise. After they saw them, you know, bite the dust, they galvanized themselves. They gave themselves like that kind of energy to say that, you know, we can't just die like this. We're gonna fight them till the bitter end, and we're gonna win. And that's what happened. And the Khan, the great Khan, didn't they face the Khan before? Didn't they win against the Khan? I don't know. I'm a bit confused with that piece of information there. When the Unbidden were reaching one of their gateways, and the Khan just popped up behind the Unbidden, and, you know, they were making a distraction. So I'm just wondering, which Khan is this? Is it still the same Khan they've been fighting against, you know, in the other parts of the playlist, or is this a different Khan? I'm not sure. But yeah, thankfully he came in at that time. He gave that distraction, he gave that time for the GTU to reorganize themselves and to reformulate their attack patterns, and yeah, they won. They won. Wow. This was great. This was really, really great. GTU. You know what? When the next expansion pack comes in, I'm gonna make the GTU. When the aquatics come in, maybe I'll make like an aquatics Greater Terran Union. I don't know, but I'm gonna make something similar to them. I'm gonna try and make them as powerful and as tenacious and as adventurous and as, you know, not giving up kind of attitude like them. I'm gonna try. I have to. Wow. Okay guys, that's it. I'm gonna continue, you know, watching the other videos on the playlist, and when they're done, we'll be going back to the Antares Confederation. Yeah. Okay guys, remember to give me a like if you like the video, comment and subscribe to my channel. Also click on the notification bell if you want to be up to date with my latest videos, and I will see you next week. Bye bye.